Oh God, whose bones are those in the pig pen? That's not right. It's not human, is it?
The woman's voice cracked as she backed away from the rusted gate, her phone trembling in her hand. A faint breeze rustled the overgrown grass, but nothing could drown out the crunching sound coming from inside the enclosure. It was a warm September afternoon in Coos County, Oregon, and the silence on the Garner family's rural property was deafening. No pigs squealing, no radio from the barn, no humming from the tractor, just silence. The kind that soaks into your bones when you know something is terribly, terribly wrong. When they finally opened the gate, they didn't find what they expected. There was no sign of the man they were looking for. No boots, no hat, not even the bucket of feed he always carried. What they did find was something no family should ever have to see: a shredded pair of overalls, a set of dentures half buried in mud, splintered bone fragments, picked clean. The pen smelled of rot, copper, and churned earth, and the pigs, they were just standing there, silent, still staring back with eyes that didn't blink, their snouts stained with something dark and glistening. That's when it hit them. Terry Vance Garner, husband, father, veteran, and beloved caretaker of those pigs, wasn't missing. He was gone, and it looked like the animals he'd spent years feeding, caring for, and treating like family had eaten him. But to understand how something this unimaginable could happen, we have to go back. Back to the beginning, back to where it all started. ... Before we dive into this true, jaw-dropping story, make sure to subscribe to Animal Story, the channel where real-life animal encounters become unforgettable tales of loyalty, survival, and sometimes terror. If you're into the wild, the unexpected, and the deeply human connections we form with the animals we love, hit that button. You won't want to miss what happens next. Terry Vance Garner wasn't what you'd call a people person. He didn't go to town much, didn't talk politics, didn't even own a smartphone. But folks in the area knew him well enough. He was the quiet guy with the pigs at 69 years old. Terry had that slow, weathered way about him that only comes from working the land. Vietnam vet, lost his wife to cancer. His only son moved out to Portland years ago and hadn't visited in ages. So it was just Terry, his small patch of farmland, and a barn full of memories. And the pigs, of course, it started small. A few rescued piglets someone had abandoned near the highway. Terry took them in, built a pen from scraps behind the barn, and fed them by hand. They were just babies, he once told a neighbor. What kind of man turns his back on something that can't feed itself? That's the thing about Terry. He didn't say much, but he had a big heart. Too big, maybe. The pigs weren't just livestock to him, they were companions. He named them, talked to them, even gave them treats. His favorite was a big white sow he called Daisy. She'd follow him around like a dog, nuzzling his leg, grunting softly when he scratched behind her ears. Some folks laughed about it. Terry and his pigs, they'd say at the local diner, probably thinks they understand English. But behind the chuckles was a kind of quiet respect. The man had found something that gave his life meaning, and he clung to it most mornings. He'd be up before the sun, brewing black coffee strong enough to melt a spoon. Then he'd head out to the pen, whistling low and carrying a bucket of mash he'd mixed himself. The pigs would come running, hooves clacking against the dirt, their snorts echoing across the fields. It wasn't much, but to Terry, it was enough. He didn't go on vacations, didn't go fishing or watch TV. His life revolved around that. Routine: feed, clean, fix fences, sit quietly, and watch them roam. He kept a folding chair by the gate, right next to the trough. Just sat there sometimes, sipping coffee, staring into space like he was listening for something only he could hear. If you asked him, he'd say the pigs saved him. After Susan died, "I didn't think I'd ever feel needed again," he once confided to a friend. "But those pigs, they rely on me. They wait for me." And in a way they did. Over the years, he added more animals, a few wild strays, a couple he bought cheap from auctions. The pen grew, and so did his connection to them. Daisy became more protective, territorial even. But Terry never languid. He called it loyalty. He believed that if you gave animals kindness, they'd give it back. But animals aren't people, don't understand grief. They don't understand loneliness. And they don't understand when a man walks into a pen and accidentally steps too close to a nursing sow's piglets. Still, Terry never saw the danger coming, even after one of the younger pigs bit him months earlier, hard enough to send him to the UHI. Shrugged it off. "It was my fault," he'd said, limping home on a stitched-up leg. "I startled her. She was just scared." Everyone warned him. His brother, a vet, tech in town, even the feed store clerk. "Terry, you can't treat them like pets. They're animals. Big ones, strong ones. You ever seen a hog tear through a fence? Imagine what they could do to a man." But Terry just smiled. "They'd never hurt me. They know me." It wasn't stubbornness. It was trust. Blind, fragile, heartbreaking. Trust. And that trust was about to be shattered in the worst way imaginable. For most people, pigs were just livestock, something you raised, butchered, or sold. But to Terry, they were something else entirely. He called them his little family. Each pig had a name. Daisy, of course, the big white sow with a crooked ear. Then there was Grunt, a black boar with a lazy eye who liked belly rubs, and two little red sisters, Biscuit and Butter, who followed Terry around like shadows. Neighbors would sometimes stop by with their kids just to watch. One woman said it was like seeing a grandpa run a piggy daycare. Terry would lean on the fence, tossing apples and leftover pancakes into the pen, laughing as the pigs nudged each other playfully for a bite. And the pigs? They responded to him in a way that surprised even folks who'd worked around animals their whole lives. They didn't act wild. They didn't fight. They listened. They cuddled. They trusted. "He's got a gift," the mailman once said. "I've seen horses respond to calm voices, but never pigs like this." Some even joked Terry should start a YouTube channel or go on the news. He could have gone viral, the pig whisperer of Oregon. But that wasn't Terry's style. He didn't want attention. He just wanted peace. And out there, on his quiet property surrounded by oaks and old farm tools and the soft snorting of his pigs. He'd found it when Daisy fell ill one spring. Terry didn't hesitate. He slept in the barn for 3 nights straight, keeping a blanket over her, feeding her broth with a turkey baster, stroking her back while whispering, "You're gonna be okay, girl. I'm right here." She recovered. After that, their bond was unbreakably, or so it seemed. Terry started spending more and more time with them, even skipping holidays with extended family. "They need me," he'd say with a shrug. And truth be told, I think I need them too. It was hard not to admire that kind of loyalty. But it also made people uneasy. Some of his friends, few and far between, as they were, started to worry. He was too attached. "You're giving them human emotions," one of them warned. "They're not your grandkids, Terry. They're pigs. You forget that, and one day you're going to get hurt." But Terry didn't forget. He just didn't care. He believed in the good in them, believed that if you loved something enough, it would love you back. And for a long time, that belief seemed true. The pigs were calm, affectionate, predictable. There was even a quiet, ordinary moment that stuck with one of the neighbors. She'd walked by the property one evening and seen Terry sitting in a lawn chair beside the pen, sipping sweet tea as the sun set behind him. Daisy was lying on the other side of the fence, her head resting right at his feet, eyes half closed. No sound but the hum of crickets and the slow rhythm of Terry's breath. He looked complete, she later said, like a man who finally found his place. For years, that's how it was. Just a man and his animals. No drama, no harm, no warning. But beneath the calm, something was shifting. Daisy started getting more aggressive with the younger pigs. Terry chalked it up to age. Grunt became skittish, shying away when Terry approached. The Red Sisters stopped playing and began huddling in corners and in the shadows of the barn. Behind all that love and routine, something darker was growing, but no one, not even Terry, wanted to see it. It started with something small. Daisy, who used to greet Terry with happy grunts and a nuzzle, began standing back when he came into the pen. She'd stiffen, head low, ears slightly back. Not aggressive, not yet, but different, Terry noticed. Of course he did, but he brushed it off. "She's just getting old," he told a neighbor. "Probably sore or tired." Hell, I know how that feels. Then one afternoon in early summer, as Terry was pouring feed into the trough, one of the younger pigs lunged and bit his leg. It wasn't deep, just a quick snap, but it broke the skin and knocked him backward into the mud. He didn't go to the hospital, just patched himself up with peroxide and gauze, limped back out the next day like nothing had happened. When someone asked if he was okay, he laughed. Guess she didn't like the new feed. Can't blame her, it smells like feet. But the incident stuck with the few people who knew him well. His brother Rick tried to intervene. Terry, I'm serious. That's not normal. Pigs don't do that unless they feel threatened or unless something's off. Terry just shrugged. I've known these pigs longer than I've known most people. They're not going to hurt me. Not for real. But Rick didn't drop it. He brought a friend, a retired vet tech named Marthot, to look in on the animals. She didn't like what she saw. They're stressed, she said after 10 minutes at the fence. Their energies, all wrong. You've got aggression, dominance, resource guarding. And that big white one, Daisy, she's not stable. Terry looked hurt. Daisy's just protective, that's all. No, Martha said firmly. She's dominant, and she's not seeing you as the boss anymore. That night, Terry barely slept, not because he was afraid, but because the idea that Daisy might be dangerous didn't sit right with him. It felt like betrayal. The next morning, he stood by the pen longer than usual, watching. Daisy met his eyes from across the mud. For a moment, there was nothing, just stillness. Then she turned away, slow and deliberate, like she was dismissing him. He told himself he was imagining things, but the pig's behavior kept changing. They began fighting over food, snapping at each other. Grunt developed a deep gouge on his shoulder that wouldn't heal, and Terry never figured out who did it. And Daisy was no longer sweet. She'd charge the gate when visitors approached. She started grunting, low, rhythmic, guttural noises when Terry walked by. He still went in every day. He still brought them treats, still scratched behind their ears, still believed, but the light in his eyes had changed. Even the neighbors noticed. He looked tired, one of them said. Like something was weighing on him, but he never said a word. That's the thing with trust, it doesn't break all at once. It erodes, bit by bit, until one day there's nothing left holding it up. And for Terry, trust wasn't just a feeling, it was a decision. He chose to believe in them, even when their eyes no longer looked kind, even when their bodies moved like predators, even when every instinct in his bones should have been screaming, "Get out of the pen." But Terry didn't listen, because in his heart, he still saw the piglets he'd rescued, not the animals they had become, and that mistake would cost him everything. Wednesday, September 26, 2012, started like every other day. Terry woke early, brewed his usual strong black coffee, and stood for a long time at the kitchen window, watching the fog lift over the fields. The sky was overcast, the ground still, damp from the night's rain. The barn roof glistened in the low morning light. The pig pen, quiet but not still, waited. He probed on his flannel shirt, slipped on his worn rubber boots, and grabbed the feed bucket like he'd done 1,000 times before. There was no hesitation in his steps, no fear in his eyes. Just the same quiet rhythm that had carried him through years of loss, loneliness, and routine. Just the back door swinging shut behind him. At 11 a.m., a family member stopped by the property to check in. The gate was open, the barn was silent. Terry's truck sat where it always did, but Terry was nowhere in sight by 11:30. The search began, and then just after noon they saw it in the middle of the pig pen. Near the trough were pieces of Terry's clothes, shreds of denim, a muddy ball cap, a twisted pair of wireframe glasses, and then something worse, a partial femur, gnawed almost clean. A set of dentures lying crooked in the dirt. Bone fragments, white and sharp, scattered across the pen, like broken shells on a beach. The pigs didn't flee when people approached. They didn't squeal or scatter. They just stared, their snouts wet, their bellies full, their hooves planted. In the churned-up mud where Terry had last stood, there was no scream, no struggle anyone had heard, just a quiet morning that turned into something no one could understand. Investigators arrived within the hour. The scene was almost surreal. Officers and forensic techs stood behind yellow tape, whispering to each other in disbelief. A fire truck sat idle on the gravel drive, its crew standing by without purpose. What could they rescue? Who could they save? There was no body, only remains, partial, scattered, consumed. It was hard to process, harder still to speak aloud, but the truth was impossible to deny. Terry had been eaten by his own pigs. They found blood in the mud, embedded in the feed trough, and smeared across the side of the barn wall. There was no sign of foul play, no intruders, No weapons, no struggle beyond the pen dot, just the animals he'd trusted more than anything else. It didn't make sense. It still doesn't. Why didn't he scream? Why didn't they stop? Some experts suggested he may have suffered a heart attack or stroke and fallen into the pen. Others believed he slipped, injured himself, and was simply unable to get back up in time. But those were just theories. The only thing anyone knew for sure was that Terry entered the pig pen that morning and never came out. People who'd once admired the strange bond between man and animal now stood in stunned silence. The same pigs that once snuggled beside him, that he'd hand-fed for years, those same pigs had turned on him without hesitation. No time for goodbye, just a few brutal minutes that changed everything. When it was all over, investigators retrieved what little was left and covered the area with a tarp. A vet was called in to sedate the pigs for evaluation, and the land fell. Quiet again, but it wasn't the peaceful quiet Terry had loved. This silence was different. This silence was haunted. In the days following Terry's death, word spread quickly. The local news ran a short segment. Oregon man killed by own pigs. It sounded too strange to be real-like, some grotesque headline from a tabloid. But for the people who knew him, it was no joke. It was personal. It was devastating. The official report confirmed what many had already feared. Terry Vance Garner had been partially eaten by the animals he had raised and loved. No drugs, no foul play, no signs of a heart attack. The most likely explanation: he fell, maybe he slipped, maybe he passed out. But once he was down, the pigs didn't hesitate. Authorities collected what little they could and closed off the pen. Animal control sedated the pigs and examined them. A few were euthanized, considered the most aggressive. Others were sent to different farms, but the stigma followed them. No one wanted to keep pigs that had tasted human flesh. The family cremated what they could recover. There was no open casket, no real goodbye. Neighbors stopped driving by the property. The air around that place felt heavy, like even the trees knew something awful had happened. The gate rusted shut. The barn collapsed on itself months later after a storm. And the pig pen, once full of life, turned into a patch of silent, overgrown earth. People argued about what to make of it. Some said it was a freak accident, a 1 in a million tragedy. Others pointed out that pigs are omnivores, that when panic or instinct kicks in, they don't think, they just act. Some experts said pigs can devour a human body in under 8 minutes, if they're hungry enough. But that wasn't what disturbed people the most. What haunted them was this: Terry loved those animals. He fed them, talked to them, trusted them. He believed deeply that they understood him, that they cared for him, and in the end, none of it mattered. One woman from church put it simply: he gave them everything he had, and they gave him nothing back. But maybe it wasn't that simple. Maybe the pigs didn't turn on Terry. Maybe they were always what they were, animals. And maybe Terry, in his loneliness, needed to believe they were more than that his kindness could change their nature, that love could somehow tame something wild. It's hard to blame him. We all want to believe that love is enough, but sometimes, especially in the natural world, it isn't single quotes too. So now, all that's left is a question for anyone who's ever looked into the eyes of a creature they trusted. Do you believe love is enough to override instinct? Or are we just fooling ourselves when we expect animals to love us the way we love them?